Hi, I'm Matt from Moogie Wonderland. I am also running the Cornwall Youth Noise Orchestra. I thought it'd be useful because you might want to do some of this at home to show you how to set up VCV Rack. VCV Rack is a free tool. You can download it on your computer or Mac. There is an alternative version called Mi Rack, MI Rack, which is available if you want to use a tablet or a phone, but I think you have to pay for that. But VCV Rack is absolutely free. It's a brilliant tool because you've got all the modules that you need to learn on, plus more. It's even used by professionals during concerts because it's more portable than carrying around loads of cases of modular equipment. So let's get started on how to install it, because there's a few things once you've installed it that you need to know to get sound out at all. Here I have VCV Rack's website, vcvrack.com. When you're there, you want Rack 2, click on this image, and you can read all about it, but and it has instructions and so on as well, a manual up here. But for now, let's just get it. So get Rack 2, click on that, and then over here you can see it's absolutely free, and over here you can see there's a paid version. Just for the purpose of learning modular synthesis, you don't need that. Here it says what to download, depending on your operating system. I've got a Mac, so I'm going to use Mac OS. I've already installed it, so I won't use that, but you can install it on Windows, Mac or Linux. Here it's got the system requirements as well, so have a little read of that as well before you install. Follow the installation instructions from VCV Rack. I'm not going to go through them. Right, once you've installed VCV Rack, you need to open it. The first thing you'll see when you open it is this screen of lots of exciting modules. They look like they're going to be lots of fun, but the problem is no sound is coming out, and actually this whole rack is actually a little bit too complicated just to get started. I would say just always build your own, really. But what we want to do here, there's no sound coming out anyway, like nothing's happening, like nothing's going on. Let's just delete it and start again. So you right click and drag over all the modules, and you can either hit a delete key or you can right click and select delete. Get rid of all of them. It's completely empty, so we need to add some modules to it. So right click, or it might be a double click on a trackpad, anywhere on there, and then what we've got here is a whole load of modules, everything you really need to get started. And the first thing you need to do is look for audio. So we've got all these modules here that you can select, but we want the first one to be audio. There it is. So you click on it and it comes in. You can move it around, you can move it down, wherever you want it. You can also zoom in, so let's go to view, zoom. Now the first thing you need to do with audio is make sure you've got a sound connected. At the moment it says no device, but we need to put the device in that we're using. I'm using MacBook Pro speakers. If you've got headphones, then it will say something like external headphones. I'm going to select speakers, and that's our audio set up, ready to go. So once we've hooked up our patch, you'll have audio coming out, hopefully. Now, one thing about what you select as your device for listening, we're using speakers. You could put in headphones. Please, if you're using headphones, make sure that you have it at a nice volume, not a loud volume, a comfortable volume, not too loud. If your device that you're using has its own settings for volume safety, I would use that, because as professional musicians, I find it important to protect my ears. Our ears are our most important tool for music. We've got to protect them. if you're listening to any music, whether it's on Spotify or iTunes or anywhere, this should be something that you do anyway, which is make sure the volumes are okay. With modular synthesis, volumes can kind of sometimes just like spike upwards without warning. So just make sure that you've got safe volumes for listening to. Right, safety chat over. Here we go, let's get stuck in. So we've got our audio module set up. We're going to right click and select another one. So let's go for VCA. This is what's going to amplify the sounds we make and send them to our audio module. So VCA stands for voltage controlled amplifier. So I'm going to click on this module here, VCA, and I'm going to move it here to keep organized. And then the next thing I want you to add, something very important for learning, is scope. So let's click on scope and let's move it over here. So this is going to show us visually what our audio signal is doing, what it looks like, and it will really help you learn what you need to be doing with modular synths. Then we're going to right click again. So we need something that generates sound. We're going to generate sound. That's the first thing you're going to do to make a sound, is generate sound. So a sound source could be an oscillator, it could be a noise source, it could be a sampler. We're going to go with an oscillator. So VCO here means voltage controlled oscillator. If I searched for oscillator, it comes up as well. So you can search VCO or oscillator, or select a tag. A tag will show you all the kind of types of modules we've got here. So let's select this one here. Here we have our first few modules. Let's get some sound coming out, so let's connect them and see what we can do. First, we're going to make sure we understand that outputs always go to inputs. Outputs to inputs. On VCV Rack modules, the outputs are surrounded by black and the inputs aren't. So here we have in the VCA module, you can see it says in for input. This one says PWN, sync, VOCT, FM. They're all inputs. So you can do an output to any of these inputs. Never an input to an input or an output to an output. On a physical modular synthesizer, this is really important because you could break it if you did it wrong, if you didn't do an output to an input. So outputs to inputs. And what we're going to do is take our output from our VCA, our voltage controlled amplifier, the module that's going to amplify our sound, output to this L-mon input, so that's left input or mono input. You could do a stereo setup, so you could attach left and right, but for now we're just going to go with mono, so that's the left one at the moment. So output to input. My cable here, well, so I'll go through that again. I clicked on output and I dragged my cable to the input here, the left mono input. It won't let me on VCV Rack attach it to an output anyway, so it won't go to another output, so that just can't happen. So once I've selected it and dragged it, I just let go and it goes there. My cable's a bit bendy to make it realistic. You might start off with a straight cable, and the way to change that is view up here and then change the cable tension, and you can see as I change it, it gets bendier or straighter. Okay, so if you want it to look a bit realistic and a bit neater, maybe just have it a little bit bendy. A word about the audio module really. This does not usually appear on a standard physical modular synth rack. it's used in VCV Rack because it's a virtual piece of software that needs to send music to your speakers or headphones. So I've selected the output here, going to the input there. We need to then work backwards to connect up a sound source, so what's generating our sound, to the voltage controlled amplifier. So our sound source here is a voltage controlled oscillator. We've got a number of options for the output. We've got a sine output, a triangle output, a saw output, and a square output. Select any one of those just to start with. Let's go with a saw. Actually, let's go with a square, and we're going to go from the square output here and then drag up the cable to the in of the VCA. There we go. I'm going to turn that down. A note on this VCA module, you can see that every other module here has a dial. The VCA module here doesn't. I'm not sure why that is, but so it can be a bit confusing, but really it looks like an LED screen, but you have to click on it and drag it up and down. It can be a bit fiddly, but that's what you have to do for some reason. So if you get stuck and nothing's coming out, it could be that your VCA module is not making a sound because you haven't put the volume up. I'm going to disconnect this a moment. We've got a sound, we've tested the sound, it comes out, it works. Well done if you got to that stage, that's excellent. Now we're going to connect the oscilloscope so we can see what's going on. So we're going to go from our input of the scope and we're going to connect that to the output at the VCA, I think. Let's do it to the VCA out. So out of the VCA, in of the scope. And there we see a flat line, a green line on my computer. It might be different on your computer. And as I put up the VCA, we'll see nothing happens because we haven't got a sound source. Let's put the VCA to there, and then you're going to see, once I connect again, the square output to the input of the VCA, you'll see what's going on with the scope, and then we'll make some changes so we can see it better. Okay, it's a bit of a fuzzy mess. Can't really see what's happening other than something is happening. So let's change the time by dragging it up, and then you can see kind of what's going on. There we go, that's a good one. That's our square wave. Square waves aren't always perfectly square, they just look a bit square-ish. Let's change it to a saw wave. There we go, it looks like a sawtooth. So this is sawtooth wave. Triangle wave will look like a bit of like a triangle. And then sine wave will be kind of like a pure kind of sine wave, up and downy sine wave if you know your maths. There we go. On the oscilloscope you can turn the gain up. So you've got a sine wave, that's kind of like this pure tone, it's quite a mellow, very mellow tone. Triangle, still quite a hollow kind of sound. Saw is a bit buzzier. And square, kind of buzzy but hollow at the same time. Let's hook up our sawtooth wave. So sawtooth out to the input of the VCA. What we can do here is change the frequency. The frequency is going to change the pitch or the note, but rather than A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like you might get on a piano, you can have anywhere in between those. So I've clicked the dial and turned it down, and you can see what's happening on our scope. As I turn it up, there's going to be more of those sawtooths in the picture of the scope. So let's get it to a comfortable kind of like sound. That sounds quite good, quite a nice bassy sound. And we'll see what it sounds like in the other waves. Sine, triangle, saw again, square. So this is our frequency control. This one below it, oh by the way, there I just double clicked on the dial to send it to its middle point. Or its, well actually I should say default point, not all of them go to that 12 o'clock kind of point. If you double click, so that's back to its default. I'm going to put it there. With a square wave it differs from sine, triangle and sawtooth in its function because it's also a pulse wave. So on this dial you'll be able to change the pulse width. Look what's happening on the scope. Turn it up, you've got these tiny spikes now of pulses. Then they're wider, so it becomes a square wave again, and then the opposite over here. This is important to know because you can't do that with other waves like sawtooth. Nothing's going to happen on this pulse width. Nothing. Same with triangle. Nothing is going to happen. Sine. Nothing's going to happen. It only happens on pulse waves, which a square wave is one of. Right, there we go. We have created our first sound. Something that I want to tell you about as well is if we look at this meter here on our audio, a good practice to do is try not to get into the red. So you want to set it at a volume where it doesn't go into that red. Once it hits the red, if it goes too far, it's going to clip off the sound and distort the sound, which is not what you want. You want a nice sound of everything that you're doing needs to be really clear. So if you turn up the VCA here, I've gone into orange there, that's okay. But if I go into red, not okay. Look, you can see on the scope it's gone above it, it's going to clip. So I'm going to put mine to around about there, because if I want to make a louder sound at any point, there's room for it to get a bit louder. And there we are. That is how to just set up and just get a basic sound on VCV Rack. So we've put in an audio to get our sound out. Remember, you've got to select your audio setting here where you're sending your sound to, and add in a scope because it's really useful. Your VCA is a voltage controlled amplifier, so that your sound source goes to that, and that's where you can control volume as well. And your VCO here is just a sound source. This is your oscillator, and that's it. So thank you and well done if you've got that far setting up.